Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning to this, the Thursday edition of Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. My name is Usihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Do me a favor, hit that like button and indeed share the stream. Help me grow my numbers. If you're watching on YouTube in particular, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. With that being said, find us on our website, please. If you want to support the show financially, anything between 50 to 100 Rand a month, 75 Rand is about the average that we do. It's funds that go a long way in supporting my other liberty-orientated work, especially some of the features, the special features we're filming at the moment. So please consider supporting the show. With that being said, enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get straight into the news. Okay, I take you now this morning. We begin at the Africa Energy Indaba, where for the second time in a while, I'm agreeing with an ANC politician.
Again?
Yes, again. You'll remember, of course, in a previous Vuka Nazo episode, that's episode 47, we'd actually covered a similar event that Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, was speaking. That was at Africa Oil Week, if you remember that, where I agreed with them there too. And I said, that Africa has to exploit its natural resources in order to get reliable energy to grow its economy, and from growing its economy to raise the living standards of Africans and South Africans in particular, to be just like what the developed countries did. Your Western countries such as the European ones, America and the like, they exploited their natural resources in order to grow their economies. South Africa, and indeed, Africa should do the exact same thing. Gwede Mantashe, of course, at the Africa Energy Indaba, as he was delivering his keynote address, a group from Greenpeace Africa, yes, that's right, those green lobby hippies who like to disrupt and destroy things whilst they push their green agenda nonsense at times. And I call it nonsense because some of the things they really advocate for are absolute trash. They use a good cause to push lefty nonsense. But nonetheless, the Greenpeace activist hippie douchebags then proceeded to disrupt his speech with a silent protest, they call it, standing in front of the minister holding a placard. Now again, I'm not against protest, please understand issues here. I'm against Greenpeace and the Green Lobby in particular and some of the nonsense they push. But nonetheless, Greenpeace itself saying the following about why they did this. This of course is from a Mail and Guardian piece. Now, Greenpeace Africa spokesperson Tandile Chinyavanyu said their decision to demonstrate during the minister's speech was to convey the message that coal is blocking the shift to renewable energy and that Mantashe, the energy minister, is a, quote, coal fundamentalist. Okay. Anyway, it continues to say there is a danger in using coal as an energy source, including health problems. We are demanding that the government brings online renewable energy to ease the constraints of load shedding and deploy them for energy security, she said. End of quote from that hippie. Yeah, this is just pie in the sky stuff. Again, let me separate issues. I have no problem with so-called renewable energy sources, especially the ones that are more practical, that work. I have no problem at an individual level devolving solar panels to homes across the country. That would definitely aid in easing load shedding. However, the belief that you can run a modern economy on renewable energy is absolutely fallacious, because when you then speak to the likes of Greenpeace and say, well, how about we use nuclear, which is a clean energy source, they'll be some of the first to say, yeah, not nuclear, rah, 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 here's my sign, here's some paint that we're going to throw on you, or whatever they do to protest these damn hippies. Gosh, I hate hippies. Nonetheless, again, as I said, they disrupted the speech by Mantashe. Mantashe not taking this lying down and actually exposing some of the hypocrisy of these Greenpeace lobbyists. I'll get to what he said in a moment. I'll play you that clip, but let me do the work of exposing these hypocrites. These organizations that are often funded by developing nations, the very same developing nations in Europe and in America and the like, who themselves used their natural resources, energy such as coal, gas, indeed also oil. Those nations who became fabulously rich off of these resources that managed to raise the living standards of their citizens to the point where they now have the luxury of using these so-called renewable energy sources and lecturing the rest of the world. Those nations, hypocrites as they are, who fund these green lobby mercenaries, are now effectively going back to the so-called dirty energy that they are telling us to not use. What do I mean by this? Well, let me be precise. Let's take, for example, Germany, which has fired up its coal-powered power plants after, of course, in a geopolitical play, rejecting Russian gas, quickly found out that it needs energy to power its baseload and keep its citizens warm in this winter, firing up its coal power plants. And here's the irony: importing coal from places like, guess where? South Africa. That's right. All those trucks that you see lining up around Richards Bay looking to export our coal, some of that coal, a lot of that coal, goes to countries like Russia. Hypocrites. Nonetheless, as I said, Germany's not the only country. The UK has reopened for the first time in a long time a coal mine in that country. Yes, you heard me right. The coal mines are back in the UK because they too recognize that powering baseload energy on renewables is pie in the sky. China, for instance, is building 43 coal-powered power stations at the moment. Japan is building 23 coal-powered power stations. These countries are some of the biggest polluters in the world, but have the audacity to tell the developing world not to use their natural resources. It's absolute hypocrisy, and the likes of Gwede Mantashe and I will agree on this point. Unaccustomed as I am to agreeing with an ANC politician, yes, even the words are coming out my mouth like vinegar. But nonetheless, he's right on this particular issue to say Africa and South Africa should, in the very interim period and into the near future, develop its coal, gas, and oil reserves to power its energy needs. And of course, once you start growing your economy, then you can slowly start transitioning to renewable and green sources of energy, such as at an individual level, solar panels for roofs across the country. Absolutely, we have an abundance of sunlight in this country, but to power baseload, you'll need actual clean sources such as nuclear, which is a more realistic energy source, which, guess what, the green lobby oppose bitterly too. Hence, I'm calling out this green lobby for their nonsense. Nonetheless, Mantashe himself responded to the Greenpeace hippies saying the following.
I must, in conclusion, remind ourselves that the European Union take a resolution on Uganda that Uganda must not develop its own oil deposits. But it's not Uganda, it's Europe that takes that resolution and impose that on Uganda. It's the same resolution here that we must not touch coal. It's not our resolution, it's a resolution of developed economies. Agents are here to tell us that, and we must resist it with everything we have. That we are a continent, we have a responsibility, we must develop our continent to the best of our ability. If we want to do away with load shedding, one, we must improve the electricity availability factor, power station by power station. Two, we must accelerate acquisition of emergency energy. Three, we must import energy from neighboring countries as we're interconnected, and we must focus on scales. That is what we should be focusing on, not on walking away from coal. Coal is going to be with us for a very long time, so those who see it as corruption or a road to whatever, they are going to be disappointed for many, many years, because coal is going to outlive many of us. Thank you very much.
Yes, he's right. Coal will be with us for a very long time. Natural gas, which we have an abundance of here in Southern Africa, we need to exploit because it too, which burns a bit cleaner, will be with us for a very long time. Oil will be with us for a very long time. And nuclear should be the direction that we're transitioning into for cleaner energy. So again, unaccustomed as I am, I agree with Gwede Mantashe. That's not to say Gwede Mantashe himself is a good character on this issue. He's still an ANC politician, and as I always say, hashtag politicians are trash. But on this particular issue, I agree with his view. All right, I want to pick up another story again, which I've covered before on the show. Where, remember, I told you that South Africa, in its descent into becoming a crime-infested hellhole, is now a country literally defined by hitmen and mass murderers. Today we focus on hitmen. 2 incidents where hit incidents have occurred, which really exemplify the dangerous nature in which these hitmen, who I must say, must be having a bumper financial season. I'm sure they're driving around with gold-plated AK-47s. Yeah, those images are real, but are not of South Africa, before people chew me up in the comment section. But you can almost imagine a scene where local hitmen in this country are becoming just as fabulously rich. And why? Because seemingly they've been very, very busy. Let me take you to Durban now, where a famous butchery, halal butchery, is closing down after its owner, effectively in a fear of his life after an attempted hit on him, is saying that's it, he's packing up his doors. I'm going to read from this independent piece where Durban Star meets butchery, of course, closes its door after the owner survives a hit. In a statement, of course, quoted in this piece, he says, "Through it all, I continue to fight back to save the livelihoods of 200 people that are dependent on the business for their daily sustenance. However, after the recent attempt on my life, the situation has become untenable. It has not been an easy decision, and my concern for staff who stood by us trying to fight the smear campaign remains our top priority, whilst we try to address the legal matters," he says. Those allegations, of course, he's speaking about is in reference to the allegations made against the business, which this particular owner had bought, of them selling rotten meat, for example, and hiring foreign nationals at the business. The owner believing that this perhaps has something to do with the attempt on his life. But nonetheless, the issue here is the ease at which attempted hits happen on people. I stick to Durban again, where a lot of this does happen in KZN, but nonetheless sticking to Durban, where another incident saw a woman drive off after her car was shot at by armed assailants, killing her passenger, and her driving off to a service station, a petrol station, where she then received assistance. I stick with the Independent that basically wrote the story up of that particular incident as follows. Now, quoting police spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Nqobile Gwala, the article says that the suspects who fired on this vehicle opened fire on them, and they sustained, that's the 2 occupants, multiple gunshot wounds. The driver managed to drive the vehicle to a nearby service station to seek assistance, whilst the passenger unfortunately was declared dead at the scene. The driver was rushed to hospital after she sustained injuries, Gwala explained, where she's also mentioned that the suspects fled the scene in a getaway vehicle. The vehicle was later found abandoned in the Cato Manor area. They are, of course, investigating this incident, end of quote. Now, again, I mentioned the fact that, it's been a bumper season for hitmen in this country. You remember, of course, one of the more prominent and shocking incidents involved rapper AKA, who was gunned down on a popular nightlife street, that's Florida Road here in Durban. That incident shocking the country, but I mentioned that it shouldn't, because the number of hits like these have been rising precipitously. And do you think that the South African Police Service, as led by a useless Bheki Cele, is on top of this? No, it isn't. Clearly not, because the hits are getting more frequent and indeed more brazen. Let me read from this Times Live investigative piece, which gave insights into the industry of hitmen. And I say industry because it is exactly that. It is a full-fledged industry where the assassins almost have an ethos, a code of conduct, a way of doing things. I can almost call it Assassin's Creed South Africa. And it's a horrible thing to try and joke about as I try and keep it light, but nonetheless, this industry does exist, and the costs of hits are detailed in this investigative piece as follows. The cost of a professional hit generally ranges from 10,000 Rand to R500,000, and the contract on Keenan Forbes, better known as Rap Star AKA, was probably around 250,000 Rand. This is according to a taxi boss with personal knowledge of the facilitation of hired killers. He said 10,000 Rand was an ordinary person who has no bodyguards. The more dangerous you are, the more costly the service. It can go all the way to R500,000 or even 1 million, depending on how dangerous the person is, he said. This is the source, of course, in the piece. Some assassinations, he goes on to say, are so complex that they can take 6 months to execute. If you want to kill someone who has a lot of bodyguards, that hit cannot be done in a few weeks. End of quote. This, of course, is referring to what's called izinkabi, a Zulu word for hitmen, who operate in Durban, who, as I said, have created a whole industry, an almost Assassin's Creed South Africa of their own. And these are hitmen or izinkabi who are used primarily in the taxi industry, unfortunately, business people using them to eliminate rivals, and even just ordinary people enlisting the services of izinkabi, often in domestic disputes. We've seen cases like these. It is a appalling state of affairs in this country which needs urgent law enforcement. You cannot have a country, you cannot build a country that is, as I always say, prosperous, non-racial, property earning and free if you literally have a situation where killers roam the streets and even create industries for themselves. Something has to give, and part of that, in a very brief solution as to what we could do around this, I've said it once and I'll say it again, we need the complete overhaul of the South African police service, its management levels in particular, and of course the wholesale removal of not only Bheki Cele as police minister, but also the ANC as a government, and from there a focus on hiring only the best of the best, professional police officials, not deployed cadres of the ANC, but actual professional, competent police officers who can manage the South African police service, which becomes a more federal structure with specialized units. Only then can you have a situation where we have trained, competent and enough detectives who can investigate such cases, bring those cases forward and prosecute these individuals, locking them up and keeping them out of our society. All right, that's it for this episode of Vuka Nazo. Let me know what you think of some of these stories. Please drop a comment whether you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube. I do take a moment to read and respond to comments. And then please do me a bigger favor, share the stream. If that's the one thing you can do for me, please, is to share this stream. With that being said, reminder, please, you can find us on our website if you want more information on what I do and who I am. You can find me, of course, at BigDaddyLiberty.com. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow for what will be the Friday edition of Vuka Nazo.